This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon, this is Liv and Len on The Bigger Picture, and I'm Juliet Jacobs. The news that the iconic SMK Bukit Nanas Convent School's land lease had not been renewed by the Federal Territory's Land and Mines Department was met with horror, dismay, and some might say disgust. Known as CBN, the school has been around since 1899 and is one of the oldest schools in the country. It has served thousands of young minds and has shaped a long list of distinguished alumni who are serving Malaysia and the world in many different capacities. So I'm going to find out more about CBN and the issues that the school is facing from Marina Yong, who is the current president of the CBN Alumni Group, and Tengku Azian Shahriman, who is a former president of the Alumni Group. Welcome, ladies. How are you today?
Thank you, Juliet, for having us here today. It's a real honor to be here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. So let's just get to the issue, right? We know that the school's application to extend its land lease, so this was submitted back in October 2017. It was rejected in December last year. And am I correct that CBN is seeking a stay against the decision to not renew the lease after it expires in September?
Yes, that's right, Juliet. I think that decision came very late in the process, because when they started the application in 2017, they had been waiting for news from the Land and Mines Department. But in that intervening period between 2017 and 2020, there was no information conveyed to the sisters that, that decision would be, not to their advantage. So when the decision came out in December 2020, it was a shock because the lease expires in September 2021, and that's only 9 months left in the lease. Yeah. And when they received the letter, there was nothing in the letter that indicated what the sisters should be doing next, because there's only 9 months left in the lease. And then, what would the sisters be doing with an entire school? What are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to move the students or that sort of thing? And there was no indication at that time that they wanted to change the lease to the federal government ownership because they wanted CBN to be a fully aided government school. There was nothing in that December 2020 letter to indicate that. So the sisters decided to go the legal route. And so that's how they have ended up with the current situation now, where they've gone for the hearing. And the next hearing is on May 4th. So I think it's very interesting what has happened in just the last few days since since the story broke on Sunday. Yeah. There have been media statements by the Land and Mines Department that it was because they wanted to convert CBN to a fully funded government school. And then, a later statement by the Federal Territory Minister, that, he wasn't aware what was going on. So there is a disconnect somewhere. And so I think in some departments right now, there must be some major scrambling to understand what has gone wrong and why it has garnered such a lot of negative press.
A lot is the word. And from so many different stakeholders, not just, alumni like yourself, not just, current students, but everybody has come up in arms. Like, for example, lawyer Derek Fernandez, he said that, because we're talking about the funding, right? He said that's a bit strange because the school has been teaching the government's curriculum as a partially aided school without any issue, right?
Yes.
Suggesting there's kind of little need for attention in that sense, right? What do you make of that?
Absolutely. Even though we do have a government allocation, right? The school does get a government allocation. Occasionally there is a bit of a shortfall, but that has never been a problem in the sense that, eventually the school has been able to find some source of funding to fill the gap. And even though this doesn't happen as often, but, there are occasions when, they do need a bit of assistance in the funding area. But generally, everything's been going on fine. And at no time was the school approached by any of the authorities to be a fully funded government school. Now, to be a fully funded government school, it falls under the purview of the Minister of Education, right? Okay. That ministry has never approached the sisters. to become a fully funded government school. Not at least according to the current serving management's recollection anyway, right? So again, very unusual circumstances.
Okay, all right. And, for those who are unfamiliar, I think many people assume that it was fully funded by the government, that it was, because it teaches the government's curriculum, right? There's this assumption, right? But it is actually a mission school and is operated by its owners under the school board, which is the Lady Superior of the Society of St. Maur. Am I correct?
Yeah. The school has a very interesting governance structure. Being a partly funded government school, a mission school, the MOE, or the Ministry of Education, allows it to have a board of governors. And sitting on the board will be representatives from the Mission Authority, the PTA, the alumni, and the top management of the school. And this is the oversight body that ensures the quality of the education offering is excellent, of the highest quality, and also to ensure that the values and tradition of the school are sort of instilled in the children in many ways, in the assembly, in the classroom, or in the co-curriculum activities. I think very importantly is that the Board of Governors makes certain key decisions, such as the selection of the principal. And, if you're in Convent Bukit Nanas, we've got really fantastic principals like Mrs. Manuel, Mrs. Vimela Matthews, and now the current principal, Mrs. Rosman. And I think if you become a fully funded government school, what happens is that the Board of Governors structure will be done away, and the selection of principals will be entirely in the hands of MOE. So I think this has caused quite a lot of alarm to the alumni, that this offer by the Federal Territory Minister that, the government is prepared to come and fund it as a fully funded government school. But what it means is that essentially there's a risk that you lose the mission school status and it becomes just an ordinary kebangsaan school.
Okay. All right. And as you said, Marina, they only had 9 months or so, right, when that decision was made. Where would that lead them? What does that mean for the students? There were all these unanswered questions. Am I right?
That's right. So you can just imagine the turmoil that went through the sisters' minds. And it's just very unnecessary to be put in such an upsetting situation. Very unnecessary. Already we have the COVID situation. And then you put on this additional stress. I think there was just simply no care or consideration on the part of the authorities of what the impact would be from that decision. And it was just conveyed in a letter, no further explanation. And then you say, you don't even give an alternative. There's no even offer to discuss this matter. In the period between 2017 and 2020, I believe the sisters went and visited the Land and Mines Department frequently.
2017, you mean?
Yeah, between 2017 and 2020. They visited the departments to try and get some feedback as to what the decision would be. But, they got nothing.
Gosh.
They got nothing. So there was no clue as to what the outcome would be. So I think the sisters have been put into very undue and unnecessary stress. Very unnecessary stress. And they are so selfless in providing education for everyone. And, of course, they have such a lot of concerns. It's not just the building itself, the heritage value, but the students. You have to think about the students as well. And can you imagine, it's announced in the newspaper that the lease expires in September. So the current students, never mind the alumni, right? The current students will be all so, let me just put it simply, freaking out, that they're going to lose their school.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
That is so upsetting. So,
already a year of disruption to education and now this, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I think this was pretty poorly handled on the part of the authorities. And I think everybody has to come to the table now and discuss this very objectively. And I believe that if due care is provided for, that CBN will come out of this very well, because if you look at the neighboring school, St. John's, it seems they have permanent tenure, it seems.
Yeah, they have a permanent title.
On the land.
But I understand that happened during under Datuk Sri Najib's period, because he is actually from St. John's. So he was able to intervene and give them a permanent title, which is exactly what CBN would like, a permanent title as opposed to a extension of the lease, so that there is certainty in the future, because we do not want this issue to arise, in the future.
Yeah.
And also, I think what Tan Sri Rafida Aziz mentioned, which I found really compelling, what she was saying is that CBN is such an excellent school, and it's produced so many luminaries like, of course, herself, as well as like the Bank Negara Governor, Ivy Josiah, Datuk Miga, and many, many more personalities, right? And she said, if there is such an excellent school in this country where quality of education has always been an issue and talked about, why can't the government fund it and fund it more? Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that we need to think about is that for the group, children from the B40, CBN provides access to quality education. For the top 20, they can go to a private school and international schools. And there are many that have mushroomed in recent years, right?
Yeah.
But if you are from the lower income group, where are you going to go to get quality education? And CBN provides that. And I think if you have a gem like that, a treasure like that, you should fund it, whether it's a mission school or fully aided government school.
That's right. Education should be for all, right? It's not the status of the school. So as it stands now, we are waiting for May 4th, right, to hear the school's application for
that's
a state.
Right. That's right. And the FT minister has indicated in a press release yesterday that he now wants to meet with the sisters. So we will see what transpires after that. I'd like to add on to what Tengku Azian said just now about the students. Mm-hmm. In fact, there is a very long waiting list to get into CBN. I tell you, parents are clamoring to get in. And they pester the Ministry of Education, to get a place in CBN. And sometimes the Alumni Association also get requests from parents to try and influence the decision process. But we stand neutral on that. So there are a lot of families clamoring to get in because they recognize that excellence in the school, and they recognize the character of the school, right? Yeah. And that character has been formed over years, right? And tradition is embedded in the school. And it doesn't bother them that it's a mission school because they recognize the quality and the excellence, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that should be valued.
Certainly. And I'm speaking today to Marina Yong and Tengku Azian Shahriman. Marina is the president of the CBN Alumni, and Tengku Azian is the former president of the Alumni Group. And we're talking about the efforts to save Convent Bukit Nanas from, basically being converted into a government school, or, there's so many issues surrounding its land lease. And we're going to find out more about their experiences as students at the school not too long ago, I assume, looking at how young the two ladies are. So we'll come back and find out more after this quick break. You're listening to Live and Learn on The Bigger Picture, BFM 89.9. Welcome back. This is Live and Learn on The Bigger Picture, and I'm Juliet Jacobs. Joining me in the studio today are two lovely ladies, Marina Yong and Tengku Azian Shahriman. Marina is the president of the Convent Bukit Nanas Alumni Group, and Tengku Azian is the former president of the Alumni Group. And CBN has been in the news these past few days, because their land lease was not renewed by the Federal Territory's Land and Mines Department. And that, of course, has been met with horror by everybody, not just, students, but so many people, because it's, not only is it an important educational institution, it's also a landmark, a historical landmark. It's steeped in heritage. And we're going to find out more now about, both these lovely ladies, both their experiences of growing up and going to school there. So tell me about that. When did you both go to school? I understand you're from the same batch.
Yes. I started in CBN in Standard 2. Mm-hmm. I think that was back in 1971, I hope.
Yes, 1971.
I'm trying to remember. It's a while back. So from Standard 2 to Form 4, I was there. And it was just so lovely because actually the atmosphere around the school then, it was so cooling, very cooling. You come in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was just so cool. Especially when it was raining, on rainy days. In fact, you really needed a jacket on rainy days because it was so cooling, right? And occasionally it would be very misty. And I still remember the mist in the trees. So that was lovely. Mm-hmm. That was really lovely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Tengku Azian, you also, same time, were you guys classmates?
I can't remember. I think
Batchmates.
Batchmates, okay.
Batchmates.
Batchmate. I think I started, in 1970 from Standard 1 until Form 3. And I think what is very marked about the time I was in school was that it was a very multiracial school, right? Mm-hmm. People from different ethnic groups, religious background, and socioeconomic group. And I think even today, if you go to CBN, it is one of the few gems in the country where it is still multicultural, multiracial. You don't see that in many, many schools in Malaysia. Mm-hmm. Another reason why we need to treasure mission schools, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember during that time, I think definitely in primary school, there were still nuns then, and the chapel was open. There's a chapel right in the middle of the school. A lot of people do not know that. And you could hear, that service being held in the chapel. And I think from a Muslim, and I talk from a Muslim person, it was something that, you build a lot of tolerance and you're open to that because you know that, they are Christians and you recognize that, they have service in the chapel and you see the nuns and you feel comfortable about it. And I think what's the greatest thing about being a mission school is that it inculcates a lot of very, very important values in you. And you carry that, you carry those values, which is even more important today now in Malaysia to have those very fine qualities and character that the school instill. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I had a wonderful time. And I think the other thing about CBN was that it's very strong on the sort of the performing arts and the choir and the debating. And English is widely used even today. So it's one of the few schools that teaches math and science in English. So I think for parents that want their children to be able to have a strong command of the English language, that's again another pull for the school. Yeah,
definitely. And talk to me a little bit about the history of the school. So I know we can trace its beginnings back to 1899, and it was established by nuns of the Holy Infant Jesus. Am I right? And they actually wanted to provide education for children of the railway workers. Am I correct?
I'm not sure, about that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's actually stated. It's stated in Wikipedia. And we can't verify that.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
Yeah.
But it was set up in 1899. It is one of the oldest schools in the country, right?
But I think the differentiating factor for this school is that they have an integral part of the school, a home for the handicapped and abandoned children. So when they first started out, it was to provide a home for abandoned children as well. So that is a very unique feature of the school. And that home is still there to this day. And we grew up knowing the home was there, and again, it just it builds in you that really deep appreciation for service, right? And occasionally, I think sometimes the students would try and help out with the handicap home, or whatever. But it really builds in the students that this is something normal. This is,
normalizing it.
Yes, normalizing it. And so, the students will always understand what service is. They've lived next to it for all their school years. So yes, I think it's a very good part of their education.
Yeah, and both what you said and what Tengku Azian said about teaching cultural and religious tolerance, and this one, and what you said, Marina, teaching about differently able people, and I guess, like we said, normalizing it and realizing that we can play a part in helping as well, and that they should be integrated within the society and not segregated and treated like special cases for that. And, let's talk a little bit about the alumni. I mean, that's no small matter. Tengku Azian, you alluded to a few of your luminaries, but, tell me about some of the other alumni who, you are members of the alumni group, who are part of your group as well.
Yes. Interestingly enough, the Alumni Association has its elections every other year or so, and so we all come together. And the current EXCO, we're from all walks of life. It's so wonderful to meet old CBNers from different years, and to interact with them, and it's so wonderful because we're all united by one common thread, which is that we've been in CBN. And it's the unusual part about this is that everybody seems to be in this pretty much the same mindset. I don't know how to describe it.
The convent girl.
Yes, the convent girl badge.
Yes, the way we speak, the way we articulate, it's quite similar. Even though some are shyer and some are, a little bit more introverted or whatever. But still, when they speak, there is that very familiar, familiar voice.
Yeah, certain convent DNA, I call it.
I suppose so.
They will always say that, if you go to any function, like a conference or seminar or anything, and if you find a woman that's very confident, outspoken, not afraid to share their views, she's most likely is a CBN, or if not from Convent Bukit Nanas, it's from a mission school, right?
Yes, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think with the alumni, not everybody is a luminary. Everybody is a luminary.
Course, yeah.
But everybody has that same zeal for life, and I think, I think we hope that more of the ex-CBNers will join the Alumni Association so that, we will all be one voice, in the future. And so we should increase the numbers in the Alumni Association so that we can represent everybody well. We would encourage all the ex-CBNs to join the alumni. And the registration fee is very cheap.
Yeah. Can I just add to that, Marina, that what happened last year, what the alumni did was they did a huge fundraising exercise, and the funds were used to actually give food aid to families of students from, that were really facing a lot of hardship due to COVID-19 because their parents have lost jobs, etc. And there was also some major defects in the school. I mean, we had to repair 2 retaining wall, which was contributed by one of alumni. And she just owned a construction company, and she just repaired the retaining wall. Wonderful. And also to do quite a number of repairs in the school. So I think, when you are partially aided school, you won't get the full allocation from the government.
That's right.
And when there's a shortfall, I think what's amazing is how the alumni have been able to rally and raise the funds to actually fill that gap in terms of funding. Yeah,
Okay.
so really quite formidable bunch of women, right, Marina?
Yes, absolutely.
And really, a simple and virtue, steadfast in duty, right? That's all of our convent schools' motto, right? And you see that coming out, especially now, with this, outpouring of support and, everyone coming together and really, but it's not just the alumni, I know the Johanians, your neighbors from across the road also have come out to support, amongst so many others.
Yes.
What was the relationship like between the convent girls and the Johanian boys? I've read about that.
Well, I would say that the road that divided the convent school and the St. John's Institution was a good boundary.
Much to the delight of the principals, I'm sure.
Yes, we stayed on our side of the road and the boys stayed on their side of the road. So, but yes, of course, over the years, I think there have been a few romances and things like that. But I think that's normal.
Yeah.
That's quite normal. And it added to the fun of, being in CBN. It added to the fun, yeah.
And tell me a little bit about your own teachers, when you were there, because you were there for a long time, all the way from secondary to primary. You must have met so many wonderful teachers and principals. Who are some of those that you'd like to talk about, if at all?
Oh, okay. In Standard 5, we had a teacher, Puan Fatima. Do you remember her? She was Cik Fatima.
I can't remember.
She was I think she was Cik Fatima at that time. So she was the netball teacher as well. So fun. She was, such an energetic, fun teacher, and she was the netball coach. And it was just nice being in her classroom because she was so open to everyone. You could just go up to her and chit chat with her. No problem. There was no divide between her and us. I remember all the students just being able to just sit around her and just chit-chat,
Lovely.
And yes, that was wonderful. And then we had so many good teachers. I just cannot even begin to name all of them. And they were so dedicated that was so dedicated. And I remember one of the teachers, she was teaching ed math. And, you know, our year is the first year to have converted the syllabus to Bahasa Malaysia. Okay. So the teacher was teaching us ed math in Form 4. I mean, up until then, she had been teaching ed math in English. And she was so valiant in her effort to teach ed math in Bahasa. It was her first year teaching ed math, and I still remember that she was absolutely valiant, and she plodded on. And it was great. I mean, you know, everybody tried their best, you know. Yeah, everybody tried their best, and I think the teachers we had were wonderful. Some were stricter than others. Some were very convivial with us. So that was fun. But yeah, and the headmistresses were so wonderful.
Yeah, I remember that, you know, it was such a open environment and such a friendly environment that we used to put pranks on teachers. We used to put like whoopee cushions and stink bombs and all that. And, you know, we got away with it. And I'm not sure whether school is half as fun today as it was like during our time. Right? Just amazing. But coming back on the story about the St. John boys, Mrs. Manuel was recalling the story to me, and she was saying that one year on Valentine's Day, the CBN, she said, the girls were so bold. They went to St. John's and gave, you know, roses to the St. John boys, and she was horrified. And she called an assembly, and of course she told the girls off. She said, you know, you are girls, you are a CBN, you do not give flowers to men. It's the other way around, girls. Remember that. And that's part of the character building that they instill in you in so many different ways. And that's so wonderful about the school, right?
Yeah, so many memories and just more reasons why this place needs to be kept as it is and, you know, continue that tradition of education and not so much just school book education, but, you know, education in life as well. Right? I'm sure your experience there helped shape who you guys became as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And, well, I know that there is a change.org petition, right, which is organized by the alumni as well, right? And I was just checking it this morning, and so far there's over 25,000 signatures, and it's just going up. But is that still something that you're looking for people to support? You know, what other ways would you like people to support this cause?
Absolutely. Keep signing, continue signing, and hopefully we'll be able to put up some updates on that change.org as events unfold. Of course, we would like to be cautious about that and not just simply, you know, put up any updates. So if we're a little bit slow in updating, please bear with us. We would just like to make sure that whatever statement we put out there doesn't prejudice the case and doesn't affect any of the parties negatively. So, but keep signing, and then hopefully, you know, things will turn out well. The outcome will be good.
All right. Any last message that you would like to leave us with, you know, with regard to this or anything at all?
Well, I think for me, I mean, the last message is that, you know, the school is an excellent school. It's a cluster school, right? Recognized by MOE. Really, there should be no change in the status quo, i.e. its status as a mission school, because the formula that the nuns have introduced has been tried and tested over 122 years. And I think there are very, very few schools with this tradition, with this track record, still in Malaysia. And therefore, we should treasure it because it's very, very rare and really, really valuable for the country.
Okay.
And also, I think for the sake of the future generation, I think the authorities have to come out and rectify the situation, and they need to show that there is due process in everything, because the future generation need to understand that the government is an agency or institution that takes care of them and doesn't look to very narrow interests. And this is what we need to inculcate for the future generation, right?
Yeah.
So integrity is absolutely important. We instill that in the students of CBN, and I think they would want to see that in the government as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been speaking to Marina Yong, who's the president of the CBN Alumni Association, and Tengku Azian Shahriman, who is the former president of the association. And they were talking to me about, all the efforts now to keep the land status and also the school status of Bukit Nanas Convent as it is, status quo, as you said, Tengku Azian. And also, if you'd like to, join that petition, just head to change.org and search for SMK Convent Bukit Nanas, and you can put your signature down there. But if you'd like to get in touch with the alumni, you just need to visit cbnalumni.org or on Facebook, and you also have an Instagram account, am I correct? And you can also email them at alumni.cbn@gmail.com. And if you missed any part of today's interview or any previous Live and Learn interviews, you can search for the podcast on our BFM app, or you can find us on bfm.my. This has been Live and Learn on the Bigger Picture, BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.